Hey there, everybody. This is Worst Episode Ever, a Simpsons podcast by people who love The Simpsons, for people who love The Simpsons, about how much we hate The Simpsons.
That's right, specifically how much we hate the newer episodes of The Simpsons, the seasons after the so-called classic era of the 1990s.
Right, and it's been said that whatever James Bond you grew up with, or Doctor Who Doctor that you grew up with, or Batman, that they're going to be your favorite no matter what, and that's not the case with The Simpsons.
Yeah, if you're like us and grew up with the classic Simpsons, you're just really lucky, because the new episodes of the show just plain suck. Objectively terrible.
Yeah, and that is not opinion, that is cold hard facts.
Yeah, so how about we consider this podcast an autopsy, where we will dissect the corpses of newer episodes and try to figure out just what went wrong. We're going to watch installments from season 11 and beyond, when the classic episodes were already far in the rearview mirror, and we're going to break them down as best as we can.
Yeah, so we should introduce ourselves. My name is Dan Mulhall.
I'm Jack Bacone.
And we love The Simpsons.
Adore The Simpsons.
We worship The Simpsons.
And this is Worst Episode Ever.
Worst episode ever.
My God, were we ever so young, Jack?
Yeah, sound of the young pups.
Young pups, wet behind the ears.
We weren't talking over each other.
No, we weren't.
There weren't any silly voices.
God. Sorry.
Man, we actually talked about The Simpsons for
a little bit. Yeah.
Like a solid minute there.
Yeah, if you're a new listener, we started with the intro from our very first episode because today is our 50th episodery.
Fitty-vittery.
Our Fitty Epivittery. And 50 episodes. That's a milestone.
It's been a long night of recording.
It has been. After this one, we're going to finally go outside and shower, which is two
Why
things
would we shower outside?
Well, it's raining, and we're very poor. But thanks, everybody, for joining us for today.
Not just today. Thanks for
50
we wouldn't
episodes.
have gotten to 50 episodes. Well, we would have, but it would have been a lot less worth it if
It would have been a lot sadder if we had no listeners.
We love our fan base. Like, they make us things.
You guys
they
are
draw
great.
stuff.
Yeah, make us more things.
Funny
Send
Facebook
us some
posts.
things.
Buy things on Amazon. It's
Absolutely.
we're really blessed to have you guys.
We are. So unfortunately, we're going to watch a terrible episode of The Simpsons today.
Actually, before we move on, I just want to say something real quick. I was say, how about this?
Okay.
Look, we acknowledge that. All right, so it was harder than I expected to make a podcast. Well, not harder than I expected. I expected it to be hard, but not in the ways it was hard.
Sure.
Basically, like managing that balance between Simpsons and others. Clearly, we're not just a Simpsons show. There's like other things going on. I don't know what.
Yeah, I don't know what they are.
Yeah. But I like our balance. You don't just listen to Car Talk to hear about how to fix your Chevy, and
Right.
or you too.
I don't listen to Car Talk at all, but yeah.
Oh, it's a great show.
No, all right.
Or you talking U2 to me to get hardcore U2
That's
analysis.
very true.
So we are what we are. But we understand that. Like, I feel like we went off a little off track in our 30s. Like, we got a little, but
Just like a lot of people in their lives.
yeah,
in their
exactly.
30s, you lose track a little
It was bumpy
bit.
for we.
Right.
But I think we got back on track. I think we've had a really great run of episodes.
Yeah.
So I guess this is like a call to, if you know people, if you're friends, or if you're in forums and stuff or comment sections and you see other people who have maybe dropped out, maybe let them know. Give us one more chance. I think we've gotten better.
Except for when I did the DiCaprio voice 2 minutes
Tell
ago.
him to skip.
But I don't always do that.
Tell him to skip the first 90 seconds of this episode.
Yeah.
But then we got better.
Yeah, definitely.
Actually, we're probably gonna go. I can tell we're going off the rails already. Tell them to start next week. Tell them to start with
next
episode
week.
51.
Right, so this is just for like the insiders, this episode.
yeah,
But
exactly.
next week we're gonna try and
Exactly.
be a lot more welcoming of new listeners.
Yeah.
Maybe much more like a morning zoo.
And let them know too. We're gonna give you guys a kind of a special announcement at the end of this episode.
Yes, stay tuned for that.
Stay tuned for that.
Something cool coming up.
And maybe we'll have some more news for you to share.
Yeah, but in the meantime, we are going to take a break in a moment, and we're going to watch Worst Episode Ever.
The
Interesting.
podcast?
No, we're gonna watch ourselves record the podcast.
We do have a mirror in the
We
studio.
do. We're going to look at the mirror while we record the podcast. No, we are going to be watching the episode called Worst Episode Ever from season 11.
Season 11. I thought it was season 12.
Oh, it is season 12. I read 11 as 12 and 12 as 11.
We
I'm
went
sorry.
50 episodes. We went 49 episodes without a
Nothing
mistake.
could possibly go wrong. Yes, you're correct. It is from season 12, and it originally aired in February of 2001. Jack,
Wow.
have you seen this one?
I have. I think I remember hating it at the time and going, "Oh, this might have been the Battlestar Galactica for me." There's a very
Right, this was around that time.
Yeah, there's a very specific plot development where it's just like, all right, they're just not even trying anymore.
Right.
But I can't. I don't know. It's hard for me to say I hated this because it's there's been so much more.
There's been so much more.
Yeah.
There were another 12 seasons and then another 4 on top of that.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
2 on top of that.
Yeah.
I've seen this one, but I probably haven't seen it since it aired, probably, or at least around that time.
Right. I'd say about the same.
So I don't really remember that much. I know it's about Comic Book Guy.
Yeah.
So we are going to take a break. In the meantime, you guys should go to WePodcast.com. You guys are so good. Click through our Amazon links. Help support the show. Keep us free. You just go to WePodcast.com, find our Amazon links, and click, and then shop like you normally would, and we get a small percentage of that.
And we love you for it.
And we love you for it. And we love you for other reasons, too. You guys are great.
3 other reasons.
3 other reasons. We'll tell you what they are after this.
Well, you should get some friends who aren't printed on paper.
What, you mean action figures?
We'll run the store for you.
2 10-year-olds running my store. I mean, wait, what is this? Bizarro World?
So, that was worst episode. Well, this is worst episode ever. And that was worst episode ever.
I'm me.
Don't jerk me around.
Yes, it sure was, Jack. It sure was.
So real quick, we'll do a plot recap. Episode begins more or less with Bart and Homer making a $50 wager that Homer can't eat the baking soda that's been in the fridge for 30, 40 years. And even though he does eat it, I guess he doesn't eat all of it. Bart wins the $50 and he goes on a shopping spree with the $50 bill, him and Milhouse. And they buy lots of things. It concludes with them getting banned from the Android's Dungeon, the comic book guy's comic book store. And then comic book guy has a heart attack at a Tom Savini was at the store talking to people from Springfield. He has a heart attack, goes to the hospital. Bart and Milhouse call 911 and save his life. So they get to take over the store and watch the store while he's recovering from his heart attack. And the A plot or the B plot, I'm not sure which is which, but one is comic book guy is recovering and starts dating Agnes Skinner, for better or worse. And the other plot is Milhouse and Bart running the comic book store, and they don't get along. They have different policies. Milhouse buys this ridiculous comic called Biclops and sinks the store. Then they fight, but then they find the comic book guy's secret stash. So now the store is successful again, I guess. I don't know if it's making money. I guess they're charging for the seats for this. So that's just going up and down. The secret stash is illegal. So comic book guy is arrested, not Bart and Milhouse. And the episode kind of ends.
That's kind of the end there, yeah. All right, but the actual episode begins.
It begins with the famous Simpsons chord, dun 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 dun, dun, like on the exterior of the house, and it always just puts me in a good mood when an episode begins like that.
This episode, there were a lot of little flourishes that felt like classic episodes.
It's a definitive Purgatorio episode. It's got a little bit of the new, it's got a little bit of the old.
Right, the closing music was also like the
Yeah.
I guess it's just the music.
But it's, when you hear that opening riff, it's like a burst of energy, and it just puts you in a good mood. It gets you ready to watch The Simpsons.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a fresh of breath air.
It reminds me of Homer and Flanders become friends, and they think it's going to end with the status quo, but it doesn't.
Right, because that's next week.
Yeah, next week on The Simpsons. And there's even making fun of the fact that so many episodes kind of start with that. And it's nostalgic, but it's classic. You can't not love it.
You can't.
You can't.
If you are listening to this and you didn't love it, get the fuck out of here. We don't want you in these next 50 episodes. But come back for episode 100.
You and your children and your children's children for 3 months.
For 50 episodes. So it begins with the Simpson family. Marge is making breakfast, and there was a cute little gag where she's making pancakes, and they're coming out of a squeeze bottle.
Yeah. Which is not a thing. It's not a bad idea.
I don't know if they actually sell it in squeeze bottles. They probably do now, but I've always seen as like one of those life hack things where you see like 23 ways to use things over. You use clean out ketchup bottles for your pancake batter, and you can squeeze pancakes. The problem being, it takes so much effort to clean out a ketchup bottle, fill a ketchup bottle with batter, and then
I would never do. Ketchup skews me out. It's disgusting.
Really?
Yeah. No, I would never be able to. Even the slightest tinge of ketchup in my pancakes would be unacceptable. That's the words I live by.
That built for me, just like I was thinking of the words you just used. Even the slightest tinge of ketchup is unacceptable in my pancakes.
It's actually the basis of my one-act play, the slightest tinge.
Unacceptable pancakes. Delightful. So I like that, and she's squeezing them, and it's making this kind of like fart squeezing bottle noise, and Marge is like, oh, I better use the silencer, and she screws in a silencer, and it just sounds like a bullet being shot.
Yeah, and it's a really funny, it's like over the top, almost sounds like a laser gun, the silence bullets.
Yeah, just like...
that extra, it's just very action movie, and it really fits. You know what, I'm just going to talk about this now.
Oh, okay.
I was going to talk about the end. This episode, in general, is very silly. It's the jokes are silly like that, where they're kind of just like fun and silly, not necessarily the funniest jokes. You know, we'll get into that. We'll get into which ones worked and which ones didn't. A lot of these problems the new episodes have, but it seems very uninhibited and just like they're just trying to have a good time. That they're really playing up the surreal. It's silly. Silly is the best words for it.
Surreal's a good word for it. Cartoony. It's a cartoony episode.
And I'm trying to remember. We've watched a few season 12 and a few season 11 and a few season 13, and I can't remember any of them being quite like this. I know Simpsons Safari was season 12, and that didn't have quite the same silly factor to it. It just it was kind of refreshing. I'm saying this was a good thing about the episode because it's just, you know, if you're not, it didn't feel like a classic episode, and it certainly wasn't as funny as one, but at least it's better than the newer episodes where it's kind of mean-spirited or too meta, or they're trying too hard, or they're trying too hard to be different or weird.
Right.
This one wasn't necessarily trying too hard. It was still a kind of a Simpsons-y humor, just sillier.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of silliness. There's Tom Savini basically practicing actual magic.
We'll go through. There's a lot, but there's lots of
a radioactive ape.
Exactly. It seemed a little bit more cartoony, more silly. Yeah, and it's just funny because I don't think this is symptomatic of the whole season. It seems to just kind of be this specific episode they really just let loose. If I could imagine like an alternate universe where Jan and Mac are doing the podcast, where the post-classic seasons still weren't as good as the first 8 or 9, but instead of being this weird garbage crap, it just became this very silly cartoony show.
Right.
Where it's like it didn't quite work, but it was different, but it was. At least it was still fun to watch. It still didn't make you mad like, ugh, this isn't The Simpsons.
Right. So then Lisa takes out the baking soda from the fridge also, which has been there since before The Simpsons moved in. So we're looking at least 8 years.
Yeah.
Well, they take it out of the fridge, and it's all moldy, and it has the sense of all the food that's ever been in the fridge.
Because if you don't know, for whatever reason, the idea behind putting baking soda in your fridge is that it absorbs odors.
Right.
It physically absorbs the odors that your fridge doesn't smell. So the joke
you know what? My fridge smells terrible, so maybe I should get baking soda.
I hear it doesn't do anything. I don't know, but
I'll try it out in my fridge.
Just clean your fridge and stop putting raw fish in there and dirty diapers.
But where's that? Where am I going to put my dirty diapers when I poop myself?
Toaster? I don't know.
Okay, I'll put it in the toaster then.
So the joke here is that it absorbed it absorbed odors throughout the decades because it's been in there, and when Homer eats it, each odor brings back a memory of the time of when he was eating that particular thing.
Yeah.
So they show a pie, and they're playing Nixon's resigning speech.
What did you think of that, the whole montage?
I thought it was interesting. First of all, they use actual archival footage. So you hear you hear Johnny Cochran doing the OJ trial. You hear Nixon. But it's very rare for you to hear actual archive footage, and not.
Yeah.
Usually it would be like if you do JFK doing Ich bin ein Berliner or something. It would be Dan Castellaneta doing a JFK voice.
Right.
So it was. It's hard for me to think of other examples where they use real archive footage. So that it stood out for me as something original and interesting.
Yeah.
And it was fun to see like the pie going across, and it's very psychedelic, but I don't know, gut-wise, I didn't love it.
I thought it looked kind of cool, like with the psychedelic stuff, but really it was just a psychedelic backdrop and pictures of sandwiches with historical footage over it.
Yeah.
And it seemed like
there was no something joke. Was missing.
Like there was nothing really to it. It was just, here's a pie while we talk about Nixon, because Homer ate a pie once.
It was an interesting way to get the idea across, but it didn't elicit any amusement or laughter.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So Homer eats, I think, one bite of this rancid baking soda, and he starts convulsing and seeing things. I guess he's seeing this montage that we saw.
Yeah.
And they say he had an antacid trip, which was cute.
I like that. Yeah, that's fine.
It wasn't like a laugh out loud thing. It was like that's
what you'd call it.
I see what you did there. Yeah. But even before that happened, there was a moment where Lisa preemptively calls poison control, and she's on a first-name basis with them. I thought that was kind of cute. It's good to,
Yeah.
Homer feels like someone you'd have to call poison control.
I'm not sure
for a
how
lot.
I felt about the joke. Lisa's delivery was a little too cutesy for me. But what really stuck out for me about that moment, so Lisa calls the poison control. It's like, Fran, just a heads up.
Yeah, just a heads up.
It really established, like, a backstory, a history that you would think in 26 seasons of Simpsons it would have more of, but since there's not really a continuity and every episode is self-contained, they don't really have that this like lived-in backstory really. So
you're saying you want to meet Fran from Poison Control and have an episode about her?
I actually really that's what I'm saying. I really like that about this episode. Is it felt like it's what a season 12 episode should feel like, where you just know, oh yeah, Homer's always getting into hijinks. He's always eating weird things. And just with that simple Fran, just a heads up.
There's a base level of Simpsons knowledge that is assumed.
Or even you don't need Simpsons. If you're watching it for the first time, you just from that line, Fran, just a heads up. It's like, oh, all the crazy hijinks Homer must have had and all the poisons he's eaten.
Okay, yeah.
So
yeah.
it's got this like lived-in quality. Like, the Simpsons have been around for 12 years. This is the stuff that happens.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that felt very season 12. Like that joke really wouldn't have felt as normal, I don't think, in like a season 3, season 4. But they don't.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But it's a cool feeling I got. But what struck me more is that it's a feeling I don't usually get in. We've watched 50 episodes from late seasons, and you'd think they'd all feel like that in some way or another. They should kind of take advantage of this built-in history. And sometimes they do with like suicide mode jokes and shit like that. But I don't know. It stood out for me for whatever reason.
Yeah. No, it was just kind of there for me. I didn't dislike it. I didn't love it. It wasn't like my favorite moment of the episode.
Yeah, if it felt more in universe, like as an established, this is a thing that we do, compared to where Homer, we know Homer's always getting a different job, and they make a meta joke like, it's like, oh, what's Homer's job this week? Whereas that feels a little more phony than something like this.
Well, yeah, this isn't like winking at the audience. This is also something that makes sense within the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's what really made it stick out for me.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so Bart wins $50 because Homer eats 1 teaspoon instead of the whole thing, and then it pretty much turns into the exact same scene from Boy Scouts in the Hood from season 5.
I do like the line, so like Homer's passed out, and he goes, oh, the antacid trip, and Bart just goes, and I won $50. It was like a cute little way to advance the story, like he won.
Remember, he won $50.
Yeah, and it was just it was a very Bart moment for him to just be like, Homer's passed out, maybe dying on the table, and he sees, oh, I won $50.
Yeah.
So
that's
I like
what
that.
we would all.
But
feel,
it is the exact same plot as Boys in the Hood. I guess because of inflation, 20 is.
Yeah, now it's $50, and $50 to me isn't even all that much to go on like that spree.
Ooh, Mr. Rich, $50. Ooh.
Look,
I wipe my ass with Ulysses S. Grant.
With $50 bills, I will wipe my butt. But no, I mean they go to the Quickie Mart. We'll talk about what happens in the Quickie Mart in a second. But eventually they have like a ton of candy, and they've just eaten all of it. And like candy bars, it's $1 each. Like they still had a lot of money left over.
I know. But the joke is for kids.
It adds up.
The joke is for $50.
See,
that's why it was almost funnier when it was $20 because $20 is a lot of money
to a kid
when you're either a kid or a aspiring writer.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of money now.
Yeah,
I would love to get $20 right now. So click through on Amazon.
Yeah, the closest I do to investing is when I put on my shorts for the first time of the summer and I find like a 10 in there.
The closest thing I do is when I put on a vest.
You're investing, yes. Okay.
There's a slight amount of disdain for my pun-based humor. I don't like a twinge of vest in my puns.
No, but not only is it Bart and Milhouse going on a spree with one denomination bill, so that's the exact same. But they go to Apu.
They right to Apu, yeah.
Like at least do something completely different with it.
Yeah, it was a little weird.
And I like the jokes. Apu is like taking them on a tour. He locks the store.
He's like the personal candy shopper.
Yeah,
I thought that was great because he's like, I'm not into gum, but I like the whole chewing thing. And he's like, how do you think about nougat? And they're like, we're onto something.
And Apu goes, we have much to discuss.
Yeah, right.
It's all very funny, but it really took a lot of points away from me because we just seen it before.
Well, we hadn't seen that specific
No,
piece.
But again,
I like the candy shopping
Milhouse, Bart.
thing. Yeah, no, this was a very familiar setup. We've done this before.
I don't know. It was a little too familiar for my likings.
So then they go, Milhouse decides something that they're going to do. And I'm just thinking about this now. That actually kind of sets a bit up for what happens later.
Oh, yeah.
Where Bart is like, oh, I guess we can do a Milhouse thing. And it's something lame. And then that kind of sets up the tension between them.
You think that's on purpose, or you think it was just a Milhouse joke that kind of worked? Coincidence?
I think it's just, if you're doing a Bart Milhouse storyline, there's necessarily going to be some conflict between them. Yeah, that dynamic, exactly. But anyway, Milhouse wants to spend money to get their clothes, go to the laundromat, and use fabric softener, which his mother doesn't believe in.
Yeah.
It was whatever. I had no reaction to it.
It took up too much time for the.
Did take up too much time.
If the joke would have to be funnier for it to take up a whole scene.
Right. And then with their last $10, they go to the comic book store, which if I found $20, I'd probably go to the comic book store. But that's me, and I'm a weirdo, a sad 30-year-old man.
So they go and they're attracted from there's a sign in the window that says Radioactive Man 1000, and that's a big deal. So they want to buy this milestone comic, and they put the $10 down, and comic book guy immediately scoffs because he's like, $10 is not enough money for a comic. Again, this seems very familiar. Bart. The last time Bart wanted to get a very special Radioactive Man comic, it was Radioactive Man #1, and he thought it would be cheap. And comic book guy, in one of his first, if not first appearances, was basically like, no, it's a lot more money than you think, stupid kid. Right. So that was the exact same beat here. And it's Bart and Milhouse and Martin in that episode. And in this episode, it's Bart and Milhouse. And then Martin's mother comes in, dropping off Martin's stuff.
Oh, wow,
so Martin is there in spirit.
That's
so
true.
not only are you doing Boy Scouts in the Hood, almost
you're doing
plot
3 Men in a
beat
comic.
by beat, but you're doing 3 Men in a comic.
That's a great point.
So obviously the whole story has nothing to do with either of those episodes, but it was weird. It was just, and then I was like, oh, maybe they're doing this on purpose as to celebrate our anniversary. And I was like, oh wait, no, this wasn't any special episode for them.
No. Just for us.
Yeah, they knew that 15 years into the future. That we would be doing this for our 50th episode.
That's right. A couple of dorks are going to call their podcast.
And they wanted to pay homage to a podcast that makes fun of them and criticizes their work.
They knew what podcasts were. So that was that. And I kind of like there was a gag where he says it's $25 and it actually repels stains and pushes it onto lesser comics. And he pours some beverage on it and it goes onto Bongo Comics.
Yeah, it bounces off the plastic sheen or whatever and then lands on the Bongo Comics.
Right, and Bongo Comics, if you don't know, is the comic book publisher that Matt Groening owns that puts out all of the Simpsons comics and a couple of other non-Simpsons things, Futurama.
It's a funny gag even if it was just any comic. Yeah. It's a nice little extra icing on the cake to make it fun of Matt Groening on top of it.
Right.
And again, it's a very silly joke for the soda to bounce off.
You're right. That's very, very cartoony.
Yeah.
And I think actually Bongo, the character from Life in Hell, was on the cover of Bongo Comics. So there you go.
Yeah. He had the one ear and
the one-eared rabbit. But anyway, as we said, you said before, Martin's mom comes in, selling a bunch of Martin's stuff. Weird side note, did you also think that Martin's mom looked a lot like a melted version of Marge? Like, she sounded similar, even though it wasn't
when she walked
Julie
in,
Kavner.
It stood out, because it's like, that's a character model I don't recognize. The hair, it felt very Season 1, Season 2 Simpsons model.
Right.
With, like, it was a little,
she had, like,
said,
weirdly
melted
colored
down.
hair.
So the shapes was weird, the weirdly colored hair. She also kind of looked like a melted down version of the... Not B, Grandpa's girlfriend, but
Can I come too?
Yeah, the woman they thought was B. Can I come too?
Yeah. Not even B. They thought it was Marge's mother.
I'm sorry, not B.
Yeah.
Grandpa's got so many girlfriends, it's hard to keep track.
That's true.
So no, I did notice that. I also really liked her voice. It was I'm assuming the same as.
I'm pretty sure Pamela Hayden does the voice of Martin. And I think it was her doing a more effeminate Martin.
Yeah, and it sounded like Martin. Yeah. To some extent, it was a great Martin. It was just like, they didn't have to do that, and it was a nice little touch.
No, it was good. Although I do feel like we'd seen Martin's mother before, and she did not look like that.
I'm sure she had to. I know we've seen Martin's dad plenty of times. I'm sure she's come up at some point. I don't know if the model's similar.
No idea.
I don't know if we've ever heard her talk.
Probably not. But she comes in with a box of stuff that she's going to sell because Martin was away at camp. And what was in the box? It was a signed copy of the Star Wars script signed by George Lucas.
There was one with an alternate
Princess
ending.
Leia's like anti-jiggle tape, which that was a little whatever. And then the alternate ending, Chewie is Luke's father,
which I would watch.
Comic book guys like, oh my god, this stuff is priceless. I'll give you $5 for it, which is very in keeping with his character. Mm-hmm. And then, Milhouse and Bart get banned from the store for kind of
Ratting him
dissuading
out,
Martin's
yeah.
mom from doing that.
They're very savvy Star Wars fans, apparently.
Oh,
and,
yeah. Well, I feel like if you are anywhere near a comic book store, you would realize that those things are worth
it's
money.
funny because Bart and Milhouse going to the comic book store is kind of part of that antiquated back in the early seasons when it was like a Dennis the Menace kind of vibe. Mm-hmm. And that's what 10-year-old boys do. They have slingshots and they go to comic book stores. And that it was kind of like a generic, this is a 10-year-old boy thing to do. You go to the comic book store. Whereas really, at least, especially now, but probably then too, but especially now, comic book culture isn't really 10-year-old boy running around. It's more nerdy. It's a more niche. So I don't picture Bart as a guy who would...
I would actually say it's less niche now.
I guess you're right, because now it's just comic book movies are mainstream.
Well, it's interesting what you're saying, that it would be like, it was like 10-year-olds would go to comic book stores. I don't know if it's just because we grew up with The Simpsons or if it was actually happening around the time. I think it was actually happening around the time where pop culture was becoming more of a thing.
Yeah, because it was
like throughout
the 90s. Gen X was the first generation to grow up with this kind of stuff, and they were kind of the first generation to take it with them into adulthood. The generation before us, and so in the early 90s, the 20, 30-somethings who had grown up in the 60s
people who were still
and 70s,
into cartoons and comics as, even when they were adults.
You grew up, you saw Star Wars as a 10-year-old kid, and you're just as nerdy about it as a 30-year-old. That's very normal now. You're right. In the early 90s, that was just becoming a mainstream thing.
Yeah. So I feel like The Simpsons actually did well to create Comic Book Guy in like 1991 or whenever his first appearance was, because he's become... It always felt organic that he was there, but he's also this great mouthpiece to kind of comment on this pop culture obsessed
But
world.
that doesn't feel like Bart to me. Like Bart does it, like he'll make a token Iron Man reference in a 26 season 26
This
episode.
is a great point. Yeah.
But he doesn't seem like the type of person who would have a podcast about one specific show. He doesn't seem that nerdy. He's like,
not that nerdy.
He likes to
poke
corpses with sticks and whatever he and Milhouse do. We found an alien in the ravine. Let's go poke it with sticks. That kind of stuff. He doesn't seem like that. He might play some 8-bit Nintendo, but it's weird to see him I can't imagine him with a headset playing Destiny for 10 hours on his Xbox One. He doesn't seem that kind of nerd to me.
So in keeping with that, I thought the same thing later in the episode when Tom Savini is coming to the comic book store, and I was like, why would Bart care if Tom Savini is going to be there?
Yeah, he gets excited because
we might care as older nerdy guys into film and specifically into genre
old horror
movies.
genre. Yeah. It was, and I'm sure it's coming more from the Simpsons writers and anything more of that ilk.
Right.
But Bart doesn't feel like to me. So that's why when Bart was like, don't do that, he's ripping you off. Yeah, he probably is just, anybody would go, oh, that's expensive, that's George Lucas, that's worth money.
Right.
But it still just felt like, I don't know, it felt off character to me. Like, Bart's not that nerdy. Bart might like Star Wars, but he's not he can't tell you like what planet Chewie's on.
Right.
But he's not that level fan.
Right.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. I totally agree with you. Okay, so let's talk about Tom Savini. Lisa reads in the paper.
Do we have to talk about Tom Savini because Marge and Lisa talked about him plenty?
Yes. So doing some quick research on this episode, Tom Savini was apparently friends with Dana Gould, who was a writer on the show at this time. I remember
you're a big Dana Gould fan. You were so excited when you read that he was joining the show, and I feel like he contributed nothing.
I have always liked Dana Gould. I was a big fan of the Fred Savage sitcom Working, which had Dana Gould on it as well as...
I know. I listened to your Working podcast.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, I liked Dana Gould from that, and he was also the voice of Gex in the PlayStation game series.
Yes. Great game.
But yeah, he worked on The Simpsons for a number of years, and no comment. But apparently he was friends with Tom Savini, and it was as a favor to him that Tom Savini came into this episode. This is how Wikipedia explains it. Wow. I feel like it's not a favor to come
be on
the super successful television show.
Can you please be on this landmark, most famous television show of all time?
It's a favor when we ask someone to be on this show.
Can you please come all the way down to Bay Ridge and record for 2 hours with us and listen to us do DiCaprio voice in your ears in person? Right. So they get Tom Savini.
But Tom Savini is a very, I guess, nerdy person to know and like. He's a cult figure.
You might have seen him before. He's not only he's also in a lot of Robert
Rodriguez movies.
Yeah, he's in From Dusk Till Dawn. He's Sex Machine. He's got that
He's
gun.
got a gun that shoots
gun.
bullets in his penis from his penis. Yeah, and he he did special effects work throughout the 80s and 90s. He directed a remake of
Night of the
Living Dead in 1990. He worked on Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah. But what's funny is we're giving you this lengthy bio so you know what we're talking about. The Simpsons does the same thing.
They do it in the show, which they kind of needed to, because I feel like
you think he's too cultish.
Mom and Joe America have no idea who Tom Savini is.
They do, but do you need to know who he is? I feel like the Simpsons, the classic Simpsons, have plenty of obscure people that they refer to that would kind of go over our heads. Maybe not Mom and Pop.
Guess.
Like, there's a lot of Dick Cavett jokes in the first 8 seasons.
But
do you know who Dick Cavett is?
I know.
I mean,
sort of
vaguely,
who Dick Cavett is. But Dick Cavett, when he was famous, when he was in his heyday,
I guess you're
he
right.
was very famous.
He was never niche. He was
right when Tom Savini was at the height of his powers.
He's still niche.
He was still a behind-the-scenes guy.
Okay, I agree, and I do think that they could have used a line to explain who he was, but it was too forced and it went on too long. He's like, he did such movies as Dawn of the Dead and and he does this and it seemed too. It was just it stopped. It's like they put the episode on pause to explain this.
You're right. I guess I feel like they needed to do something to explain who Tom Savini is. This maybe wasn't the best way to do it.
Right, exactly.
Maybe it would have made more sense for him to say it himself.
Yeah, when they introduced him,
comic book guy to do it.
Instead of saying he was the makeup artist on Dawn of the Dead, he could have been like, "Oh yeah, we used this on Dawn of the Dead,"
Right. Or throw in some joke credits or something. Like he worked on.
yeah. Amistad.
Yeah. Sure, why not?
Just some prestigious Oscar movie.
Yeah. I thought Tom Savini was, it makes sense if he was friends with someone on the writing staff, but he's an odd choice in universe for what they're doing with the plot. Like, they need something that's a draw to the comic book store that Bart and Milhouse will want to go see and won't be able to because they're banned. Tom Savini? Really?
Yeah.
That's not the first choice. I don't know who the first choice would be.
I guess if Dana Gould really wanted to get him in, this would be one of the, out of whatever season 12 episodes, this one might have made more sense.
Stan Lee, I could see. I know Stan Lee was in another episode. Or some actor from a TV show.
Right. Yeah, I guess because of his niche quality of celebrity, it does just kind of stick out a little bit. But it worked. It was fine. And they do gags with his, he's a practical effects guy, and gore, and so he the first thing he does is eat too much, and his stomach grows and explodes. Yeah. And the practical effects that he does as a demonstration are
completely impractical.
Yeah, in real life they really wouldn't work. It only works because it's a cartoon. Like he takes his head off. And,
I like that. I thought that was a great thing to do. Like if you're animating the special effects expert, do things you can't do in real life.
Visually, it was interesting to look at. It didn't really make me laugh at all. I don't know. Like when his stomach blows up and it gets gore. I did like the line Bart and Milhouse are watching from outside because they're banned, and they're like, "Oh, that could have been blood and guts all over us." And,
we missed the gut buster.
Yeah.
I mean, it was visually, I liked it. Yeah. If you're having Tom Savini, you don't want him to talk dryly about special effects. You want to do
unzip his pants and shoot you shoot
him with the sex gun. Even before they actually go in and see Tom Savini, I liked that to sneak in. They did. Milhouse was walking, Bart was on his shoulders, and then Homer was on Bart's shoulders.
They're carrying Homer instead of the other way around. Well, I guess Homer did have to be the top.
Yeah, right, because he has to see his head. Yeah. Classic gag. They made a joke like, "Did we have to walk all the way from home?" Which is funny. But even better than that, I like they're found out, and comic book guy tells them, you two got to go. Homer, it's okay to come in, and then he pays Homer off for tipping him off that they were going to do this.
Tipped him off.
I love that. I love that Homer sold them out.
I thought it was jerk-ass Homer. No. Why would he do that? Why it doesn't make sense?
You're probably right that it is jerk-ass Homer, but it was just. It wasn't played up as Homer being a dick. It was just like, they walk in, he's like, "Well, sorry, boys." And they're like, "Here's the money." He's like, "Thanks." And he just goes right in.
Yeah, I guess it plays into the silliness we're talking about. But I didn't like it as a character moment. I thought it was really jerk-ass of him. But I did like, he goes, "Hello, I'm Shaquille O'Neal." I like his silly voice, I'm Mr. Burns. And I believe you have a letter for me. Yeah. But I like that, but I really liked he goes, "I'm Shaquille O'Neal. Let us in, please." I like that he says, "Let us in." Like right. He's subconsciously betrayed that
exactly.
And then before that, what did you think of that line where back in the kitchen when he comes up with the idea, he goes, "Don't worry, I'll get you to see Tom Savini. I have it all planned out." And Bart goes, "How do you have it planned out? We just heard about it just now."
I honestly don't even remember that line.
It's just like a kind of a weird absurdist line.
Yeah,
I don't know. I thought it was
cute, but
I don't know. I thought it was a little too cutesy.
Yeah. And then Tom Savini kind of starts. I guess heckling-ish comic book guy, making him the butt of the magic basically that he's doing.
Which I like. I'll get into this more later. if Comic Book Guy's arc was that he is just taking his sarcastic criticizing too far, and he's got to lighten up a bit and be more social and human.
Right.
This would be a good way to show it. It's like, look, you got to stop, give Tom Savini some space, and now you're just gonna get it back tenfold.
He didn't really like insult Tom Savini, did he?
Well, yeah, he was like, oh, that effect was so lame, and he was just like poo-pooing the effects. He's like, I've seen better effects in
Right, he did. Okay,
he's just
so
doing.
then it makes sense.
He's doing what he always does, but now they're concentrating it because the story was Comic Book Guy's a dick.
We have to see first act he's a dick, second act he suffers, and third act he's better.
It was a good way to have Tom Savini pick him out in front of the crowd, except, and we'll get into this, they do nothing with it. It's just yet another, I feel like, in a long string of failed arcs we've been hitting in this podcast lately.
Well, all right, we'll talk about it.
We'll get into it,
yeah, but I do like the idea that it's some idol of Comic Book Guy who brings about his downfall.
Yeah, exactly.
And he has a heart attack on the stage at the comic book store, and that's kind of, how he's brought low.
Yeah, he has a cardiac episode.
Yes.
And he goes, worst episode ever. I didn't remember that the worst, I just assumed it was worst episode ever because it's a Comic Book Guy episode, and it's, it's a meta take on the phrase. I kind of like that. It also has this other extra meaning.
Yeah, that was good.
His worst cardiac episode.
I bet they patted themselves on the back when they came up with that one.
They would deserve it. So I'll give him a airwaves pat, a podcast pat.
There you go, guys. A fist bump across time and space.
Right now, like 12 years ago, he's just, what the hell is that? Just reaching out like from Interstellar. Just good job, Murph.
I thought it was weird that Comic Book Guy has the heart attack and the first act ends. It kind of ends on a dark down note. There was usually I feel like they would do a quick gag just to be like, oh good, there's still comedy. I'll release the tension.
You're worried that the audience for 3 minutes were in this horrible state where they thought Comic Book Guy was dead.
Right. Well, it was just odd because I feel like usually they end on a joke.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you're gonna end on a serious button for an act, usually it's to really serve something home, and it didn't really matter here.
Yeah. So Comic Book Guy's in the hospital. Dr. Hibbert says he has a cardiac episode, like we just said.
Yeah, he says being a comic book proprietor, they call that the Widowmaker.
Yeah,
that's a very funny idea, just to give such a mundane position that, and then on top of that,
because the stress level in owning a comic book store is so high.
Yeah, and then on top of that, they say if you actually had any widows, but no comic book store owners.
It's never actually happened.
So I had that actually. That was a fun joke. Oh, he also said my prognosis. Dr. Hibbert goes, my prognosis or diagnosis or whatever.
Yeah, right. I never remember which one's which either.
Yeah, I mean, he's a doctor. He should know.
I'm not a doctor.
I feel like the writers didn't know, and they're just like, isn't it be funny if they leave it in? Again, that's just like a silly joke that's for silly's sake.
That works because Dr. Hibbert's kind of a silly character.
Yeah, no, they just felt like they were having fun with this episode, like with fun with the script.
Right.
Which is good. They should have fun with it. It's The Simpsons.
Yeah, and Dr. Hibbert says that he needs to take some time off. Comic Book Guy should have one of his friends run the store for a little while. He says he has no friends other than the super friends, which, whatever.
Matter, yeah.
If you're talking about not having friends, that's the lowest hanging fruit. Exactly. So it's fine that they did it. But basically, Bart and Milhouse end up running the comic book store.
Yeah.
I think that's a solid premise for the episode.
I didn't quite care for Comic Book Guy going, two 10-year-old boys running my store.
That's too cutesy.
Too cutesy. No, that is a great idea for a premise. You're right.
Yeah.
And because not only is it a fun location to put them in a fun situation in the situation comedy to put Bart in, it's a good Bart plot.
Yeah.
But it also plays up Bart and Milhouse's dynamic. So now you have a story that's motivated by character and not by plot, and that's always a huge plus because it makes the jokes funnier, and the jokes come out of that. And we've said all this before. Problem is they didn't quite. I don't know, it didn't quite land for me, the story. But before we say why, there were a lot of comic book jokes I like. So they first show you Bart and Milhouse have all the kids in the store. It's under new management. Bart's
they're going to treat it differently where they're like being more sociable.
5 kids, 4 kids. Bart's working the floor. He's like, everybody's reading. I guess I didn't think about that. They're reading. That's a change right there. But Comic Book Guy never lets you read without buying it. And they're kind of like more laid back.
Well, and you also never see anyone just kind of hanging out at Comic Book Guy's store. But now when Bart and Milhouse are running it, like there's just a bunch of kids.
It's very familiar. We've seen this before. It's very reminiscent of when Bart opens his treehouse casino and he's working the floor.
Oh wow,
there.
you're right.
Yeah.
The way he walks through everybody's exactly
he's
the same.
Just doing that like that. Working the floor.
Just
he's
schmoozing.
Schmoozing. But there was some stuff in there that I really liked. They always do very good comic book jokes. I remember in the classic era they had that great string of there was comic book guys who was like Man Boy and Tree Man and.
Yeah.
So there's one is vampire dinosaur.
I knew it.
And
Yeah.
Bart says, "You can't make that stuff up." That's a cute line because
Man.
it's so.
I would read the shit
Vampire
out of
dinosaur?
Vampire Dinosaur.
I would love
that
to.
sounds so good. There's Devil Dinosaur.
And there's
pretty
Bunnicula,
good.
which is a vampire
Well, that's a
bunny.
book.
So
There's no pictures in Bunnicula.
I also liked the death of Sad Sack.
Yeah,
that's a very Simpsons-y comic book character, Sad Sack, and then for him to have a death of Superman.
Oh, Sad Sack's a real character.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, I'm almost positive.
Yeah, so I didn't realize it was real, but it's still funny to take like a Beetle Bailey type character and to just have a death of Superman arc to it. It's kind of a meta comic book joke. And then that little scene culminates with Ralph trying to go into the adults only section.
Yeah,
which I don't think they've ever had before. But
no, what did you think of this?
All right, so he goes, it's the porn section, obviously, with the curtain.
Right.
Ralph wants to go see it, but he's not allowed. But Bart's, laid back and cool. Says, just go on your tiptoes. Ralph goes in, sees the porn, and says, what does he say?
He say, everybody's hugging.
Yeah. I didn't like that.
Really? Okay. I actually do kind of like that line.
I read just before the show on the Wikipedia episode, the original line was, she's hungry.
Yeah, that's a
which is
much bluer line.
Exactly. He sees her eating cock, I imagine, and
earn that explicit tag.
Yeah. So I think I like that line more, even if it is kind of blue. I don't know if
I feel
that
like
might
that
be too
line
much,
would
right?
never ever get into the show.
It's because it's really clean enough. It's like detached enough that you have to think about it. Like it's really it could really sneak by a censor.
Yeah.
And it's not harmful to kids. It's because kids just aren't gonna get it.
Right.
So I think I would have liked the "I'm hungry" line better, but I didn't really like this Ralph line, and now it made me think about it. And I don't think I've talked about this on the show, but I would say like 50% of the time I don't really like Ralph jokes. I think there's a more concentration of them in the first 8 seasons, the classic era, that I do like. But even then, a lot of them I'm not crazy about. Like, sometimes some just make me laugh. Like when I think my favorite might be when. I think it's my favorite episode too, where Lisa fails gym or whatever.
Me fail.
Yeah. So so it's a Ralph fails English, and me fail English. That's impossible. I think a lot of people that line stuck.
Yeah.
But that's a fine line. I think it might just be a little overplayed in my head for me to love it as much as it should be loved.
Right.
I love right before that though, where he goes, I won. And,
right.
And he's like, you didn't win. You failed English. And Wiggum goes, get off the stage, sweetheart. So there's Ralph lines I like, but a lot of them are just like they feel forced. They feel like, oh, here's a Ralph line.
So 2 points. First, not related to what you said, but I just read this on Wikipedia before. That line was Hank Azaria's favorite line of like the whole series, I think. Oh, he said that in the DVD commentary for this episode.
Which one?
The Everybody's Hugging Ralph's line.
Oh, come on, Hank.
Which I think it's a fine line. I don't dislike it as much as you do, but it's certainly not my favorite Simpsons line of all time. And second, to your point about Ralph, so Ralph in the classic episodes was, he was just he was dumb.
Yeah.
He was just a dumb kid, and so he would think like, oh, I'm getting punished. I want an award.
Yeah.
Like I don't understand how it works. Nowadays, and probably starting around season 11, season 12, they would just bring him out for like random humor, like to say a funny line and be like, everybody's hugging.
I think you're right.
I think everybody's hugging is a little bit closer to the classic episodes, but like nowadays, he definitely just wanders out and like says a thing and then he leaves.
I think that might be you're right. I think that's the delineation of why I like Ralph jokes and when I don't. When they're just there, they're part of the script. That's great. I feel like if this was a live action show, if this was Sanford and Son,
right.
Ralph would come out and have like that Frank Nelson.
Yes.
Or like when Kramer would come on in the early seasons of Seinfeld, and they're just cheering because he's just there.
Yeah, like Kramer's here.
Yeah, and I feel like that's how they treat Ralph. It's like, here's a Ralph line.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think because those Ralph lines, for whatever reason, did catch on, I think it's the delivery.
Yeah.
In the first 8 seasons, me fail English became such a fun line. I think that now they're just like chasing that, and they're just like, here's a silly Ralph line. And that might have been that period of the show, the period of the show this was on, Purgatorio. Mm-hmm. And now that's become so ingrained, and now they just do Ralph jokes. Like, there's not even an event to it anymore. It's just like you're doing it in your sleep. It's just like you're phoning in these Ralph lines.
Right, it's just something crazy gets said.
It's just really diminishing returns. Sometimes a Ralph line will make me laugh, but for the most part, they don't, and I think that's a big part of it. You're right. I think it's because it's just there, it's forced.
Yeah.
Good pancakes, Mom.
Oh, thank you, honey. They come in a squeeze bottle now. Whoa. I better put on the silencer.
So yeah, Bart and Milhouse are now controlling the comic book store, and Bart has basically kind of taken the manager position and is making Milhouse do all the grunt work, which will lead to some tension between them in a few scenes. But he says, I need you to go mark down all the Poochie merchandise, which is nice, a little continuity callback, there, that, Poochie merchandise is obviously going to be on clearance.
Yeah. I just realized the Poochie thing, worst episode ever, the first time that phrase was uttered was in the Poochie episode, right?
Yes, yeah, it was.
So it's even a tighter callback there. It's
kind of, just tying it
like,
tying
it's
it all
almost like
together.
it's paying homage to the origin of worst episode ever.
Right?
Probably
Yeah,
not.
that's true.
They're probably overthinking it, but that's nice. And then so now you get the rumblings of a plot here where Bart and Milhouse is getting overworked, and Bart's kind of just being the boss and just like making Milhouse do all the work, which is sounds
also
familiar.
Yeah.
When Bart owned the warehouse.
Yeah, when Bart bought that factory. Yeah. Very similar.
Yeah, this whole episode seemed to have just been pieced together from other ones.
Yeah.
But I really liked, they play up that Bart's being the boss and doing nothing, and Bart goes home for the day, and you hear the bell on the door, you hear him go out the building, and then you see him walk by out of the storefront window,
yeah.
and he's got like a trench coat and a hat on, like a very like 50s Mad Men, like...
right, like a fedora.
No, I mean the vibe of like the man going home from work at the end of the day.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's got the fedora and the trench coat on, and something that's very silly because Bart's a 10-year-old boy.
Right.
And that felt like a very classic Simpsons joke to me. Between the staging where you always had a character walking by through a stage front, to me that's very Simpsons. Mm-hmm. And then to have 10-year-old Bart being older than he is and having this like 50s vibe and going home for the it's just very I don't know I really like that moment. It was cute.
Okay, so the next scene is Homer and Comic Book Guy are walking to Moe's.
Right.
And it's interesting to me that all of a sudden Homer and Comic Book Guy are like good friends.
Yeah.
I guess the connection is Homer has already had a heart attack before, and Comic Book Guy just had one, so he's going to like show him the ropes of how to live with having a heart attack.
That's very generous of you.
Yes,
to the writers.
I'm straining here.
That's some headcanon, I think.
Yeah.
But that works, and I think it's also because the arc for Comic Book Guy, I guess, is that he's lonely and has no friends. They established that in the hospital, so I guess Homer is going to be his friend.
I guess. I feel like now in a modern episode, if they did the same plot, Homer would not be there. We'd just be following Comic Book Guy.
He would come in he'd come in at some point.
Homer would he'd come in at some point for sure.
Just jerk ass it up, but
punch someone in the face and say, "Fuck you, asshole."
Yeah, I guess the plot here is that Homer is befriending Comic Book Guy because he's lonely, and I guess they have this heart connection. And he takes him to Moe's because that's what you do. And actually, Homer's done this before. This is familiar. When Homer becomes friends with Flanders, he takes him to Moe's, and he's like, "This is my second home. This is very big deal for me to take you to Moe's." And Flanders doesn't like it because it's Moe's. And that's kind of what happens here.
Yeah. To be fair, Homer, anytime he gets a new friend, of course he's going to take him to Moe's. Where else does Homer go?
So he takes Comic Book Guy to Moe, and Comic Book Guy doesn't belong there, and he doesn't fit. And they play this up first with Homer's like, "It's a very friendly place. You'll be fine," because Comic Book Guy's shy and introverted. And it opens with Moe murdering somebody. It's either Bill or Sam, one of those other barflies. It's not Lenny, Carl, or Barney.
Yep. The guy with the glasses.
He actually shoots him with a shotgun, and you hear a thud. Head cannon. He's only shooting like beanbags or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And Sam's not dead, or Bill's not dead.
I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, you feel like when Moe murdered
I did.
It makes sense.
It makes sense for Moe to do it at least. Because it's funny to see, like, this is a really friendly place, and of course the most heightened thing you could see is Moe shooting someone.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. I thought it was a little too much. And then this is a good way to play up Comic Book Guy, his extreme cynicism, and like just the fact that he's so insecure and he has to criticize everybody else, that he's built a wall and he can't make friends because of this. So he's the guest of Homer at Moe's, and he's just trashing the whole thing. He's giving beer shit. I do like that the bottles of alcohol at Moe's are painted on. That's a very great Moe detail.
Yeah.
He only has beer. The bottles and the top shelf, all that is just painted on.
Right,
it's
right,
two-dimensional.
Yep.
That's very Moe. That's very great. And then Comic Book Guy bashes beer. He says, "Oh, it's terrible. It's the nectar of
the nitwit."
Yeah, and he's just down. He's just shitting on everybody.
Yeah.
You might as well have a podcast where he just shits on everybody else.
That's exactly right. What an asshole.
But I love, so Lenny goes, "You don't badmouth beer. You don't badmouth Duff. Duff is great."
Duff is great.
And he
smashes the bottle on the Duff bottle on the bar, and it just like crumbles to dust.
Yeah, he can't even.
I thought that was so funny.
And then Lenny, he goes, crummy bottles.
Yeah,
and he badmouths Duff.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that was all very well done.
And then comic book guy gets thrown out, literally thrown out of Moe's. And,
wait. Before that,
yeah.
he bashes air conditioning, and Carl gets the air conditioning's defense. He goes, "Hey, they keep us cool in the summer, pal." And that's just a great, don't you bad bash the air conditioner.
Right. So then they literally throw comic book guy out into the street, and he goes, what is the Klingon word for loneliness? Kla-kla, or whatever the hell it was. Yeah, right. I did not realize that was from this episode. I thought that was from a classic episode.
It's more familiar sounding for sure.
A lot of moments in this episode were more familiar to me than a lot of other like season 12 era episodes.
I don't know. I feel like this maybe a little earlier, maybe in 10 and 11. Comic book guy was getting more, but I feel like this, before now, but in the classic era, he would never have more than a few lines. He was never.
Oh no! Well,
he was never a tertiary character. Like I consider a post-classic episode. I don't know what season it is, but the Mensa, where Lisa goes to Mensa.
That's season 11.
Okay, so comic book guy is now one of the group.
Or no, that's season 10.
He was like one of the core group.
Right.
I don't think he really had that capacity he's never one of the. Let's pick 3 or 4 random Springfielders for this scene. He was never one of those. It was like the big ones. Was it Boo and Barney?
Well, the Mensa one, they had to pick smart people, and I guess him being high up on his.
But
high
I
horse,
also think
smart. But
his being graduated up from he was just this one note character, and then because they've done everything after 8 seasons, now they're looking
right.
Other
I mean,
places.
this period of time on the show, they were definitely using new characters as in season 5 or whatever, they were doing like Apu episodes, and Mr. Burns episodes, but they've done all those, so moved
now
on
they're going to comic book
to the
guy.
next tier.
Yeah, and
that's when we get to like Gil episodes in season 18.
They did kind of put a stop to it. Like you had Lou the cop in that '90s show. That was like his big promotion, but you still aren't seeing a Lou the Cop centric episode, and he's been around since season 1.
Maybe there is one.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. He's been around for 26 seasons. You think that at some point they would get to that.
We want Lou the Cop's backstory.
But they haven't really done that. They've kind of drew a line at some point, like where they didn't want to get too obscure with the characters.
Well, I mean, maybe they did. I have no idea.
You're right, but I feel like we would have hit more than one by now. I think the only one we've hit so far is the Gil one.
Yeah.
I don't think we've seen there's no.
Well, there is a Carl episode that's fairly notorious.
Oh, yeah. Well, Carl's a bigger character though.
Right. He's been Homer's friend since season 2 or season 1.
And and you're right. Actually, you're right because there's a Kent Brockman episode. And I remember when they did that, I was like, he's been around forever. He's in so many Simpsons, but it feels weird to have a Kent Brockman episode. Yeah. You're always watching him. You're never in his head, really. I thought that was weird. And then there's a Groundskeeper Willie episode too. We haven't got up to yet. And that was also like, wow, there hasn't been a Willie episode. But a Lou the Cop episode would really, I don't know, be pushing it.
Season 27, make it happen, guys.
I'm surprised they haven't done it yet, to be honest.
We want to see Lou the Cop. So we go back to the comic book store where Milhouse has been left in charge by Bart. Not a great idea, Bart. Uh-oh.
Remember what happened to your factory.
That's right, it fell down. First it fell over. First I watched it falling over, then it fell over. So Milhouse is in charge of the comic book store, and a guy from Plan 9 Comics, which I'm assuming is a reference to Plan 9 from Outer Space, the notoriously awful Ed Wood movie. Right. Ed Wood, though, notoriously great movie about the making of Plan 9. But Milhouse is there in the store, and this guy comes in, and he's pitching this comic called Biclops.
Yeah, produced by LensCrafters.
Produced by LensCrafters. It's a superhero who wears glasses, and that's basically it.
So he sells Milhouse on these Biclops. He plays up that fact that he's a nerd, and people will respect you. Milhouse sees a kinship with this character, obviously.
Right.
And then Lisa comes in.
The best is Lisa was there already and kind of like had complimented Milhouse on running the store. And being co-manager, I guess. And then this guy comes in selling Milhouse these comics, and Milhouse has this really weird noir fantasy in black and white where he's like a private eye and Lisa is like the femme fatale kind of character.
Which was weird to see Lisa all quote-unquote sexy.
All sexed up, with like a feather boa and everything.
Yeah. But I didn't hate it. It wasn't too much.
And he's like, I answer to no one, because she's like, I need someone who's not a co-manager but a full manager. Yeah. So he says, I answer to no one. And then when it comes back in, Milhouse is like, yes, I am the manager, and I answer to no one. And he turns and winks at Lisa, and Lisa just goes,
makes a face, because she doesn't know what he was in his head.
Because she has no idea what his daydream was. I thought that was so funny. I loved that entire bit.
I thought it was okay.
Oh,
you really liked it, I know.
I did really like it.
Yeah, it didn't do. I don't know. It didn't do much for me. Okay. I did not like it. It was cute.
I just loved the kind of just like, It's weird that Milhouse's fantasy was this noir thing, especially when he's working at a comic book store. Maybe it made more sense like a superhero comic booky type thing.
He could have pictured himself as Biclops, and Lisa could have been Lois Lane.
I just love the window into Milhouse's head that like this is how he thinks, and he's like trying so hard to be cool, but she has no idea what he's doing or talking about. So we see Comic Book Guy, and he's going to the Adult Learning Annex, I think, to go to a How to Make Friends class, which we never actually even see, because before he even walks in, Agnes Skinner calls him Tubby and pushes him out of the way. Yeah. And they start trading verbal barbs back and forth.
It's a meet cute is what they call it in the industry, where you start off a romantic comedy where two people usually don't get along, but sometimes they do. But for whatever reason, they're cute. Their meet is very cutesy and stagey.
Right. And this makes sense in that these are the two most sarcastic people in Springfield.
Yeah.
So I like that they would have a relationship because there's like grudging respect, like you can give it as good as you get it or whatever like that. But it's still a very, very random pairing of two people.
When this first aired, I really hated it because I was just like, oh God, they've totally run out of ideas. Comic Book Guy and Agnes, come on.
Yeah. Ugh. That's as bad as Grandpa marrying Selma.
Yeah, it's like, so I really had that opinion of it at the time, and now that I've watched a lot of other episodes, and with time heals all wounds, and
it's not that bad.
It's not that. The pairing itself makes sense. I do think this story kind of fails as a whole. But no, I'm not. Just if you just say Comic Book Guy and Agnes, that pairing right there doesn't offend me as it did when I first saw it.
Right.
With that, I said that was my Jockey L's moment when I watched it.
Oh, really?
I was just like, oh man, oh God, they're really out of ideas now. And now I see in retrospect that it wasn't that bad.
I mean, it's not just like he's all of a sudden in love with just any random old lady. I think it makes sense because they do have this superiority sarcasm thing in common.
That said, I really do think that this part of the arc failed. I think the comic book guy story in general, the whole plot failed as a arc. It doesn't go anywhere. But even this specific part,
I don't know
their
if it doesn't
relationship.
Go anywhere.
Well, I'll get into why. I think I might be able to convince you, but we'll see. But in terms of their relationship, I think we needed to see a lot more of it for it to work, especially here. So they kind of fall for each other. But it's just this one scene. They're meet cute. And here's what I put in my notes. More like meet puke. Because
you should be a writer.
Because they bump into each other and they get into this whole thing because she tried to get into the door first. Like, that's it. Like,
well, she called him Tubby.
Yeah, but it needed more. It needed a better starting point.
Well,
like,
I will agree that it needed more.
Maybe he leaves the house and like they have a run in at the bus stop or something, or she drives past and splashes him with mud, and like that's those romantic comedy tropes where they keep bumping into each other.
Right.
Then they bump into each
like
other in the elevator.
Multiple things.
So that it culminates so that when they get to the door, now they're like really trading barbs, and because the idea is that Agnes kind of falls for him while they're
she falls
trading
for him
barbs
very quickly. Yeah,
she's
it's
just
way too fast.
She's like, why don't you're
the most rude, loutish person who's ever bought me dinner.
Exactly, which is a fine line. That's a very tropish way to do line. But it needed more. Like, why did she suddenly decide, you know what, this guy's nice? Whereas if you had all this built-up tension and back and forth, and then when they finally culminate, and then she goes, you know what, this guy and me are two of a kind. Yeah, I'm changing my mind on him.
Right.
That would have made more sense.
Yeah.
Like, instead, it was just too quick.
It was very, very rushed.
And then that's too quick, and then as we get through the beats, they really have a quick montage, they're dating, and then it just kind of ends. I think the whole thing needed a lot more meat.
Well, I think... the story here with Comic Book Guy is that he's stressed out and lonely and has this sense of superiority, and he needed to have this kind of human to human interaction, which he does, and that's kind of how the episode ends, where he has kind of felt what it's like to know somebody else in the biblical sense.
I mean, I really think the ending failed. I feel like we can get into it now.
Let's get into it now.
Or you want to wait for it?
Let's get into it now.
All right. So. Yeah, what is Comic Book Guy's...
Let's just talk about the whole Agnes and Comic Book Guy
What is Comic Book Guy's character arc? It starts with him. He has no friends to the point where when he has a heart attack, he has to leave the store with two 10-year-olds, and he barely got out alive, and he has no friends.
Right.
So he has no friends because he's put up this wall, and he just attacks everybody else, and he doesn't let anybody close. Mm-hmm. That's his arc. Then he meets Agnes, who is very similar. They hit it. This is great. This is all great stuff. Him and Agnes date. Again, I think they're dating They needed a lot more scenes, and we'll get into that with the beat by beat. It just needed more. But then it ends with he gets arrested because of they find a secret stash of illegal videos. He goes to jail. He gets taken away. He goes, "Will you wait for me?" And she goes, "No, I'm very old. I don't have a lot of time to."
My bones are half dust. I like that line,
makes
by
sense
the way.
and that makes sense. Agnes isn't going to wait. She doesn't have time to wait.
Yeah.
So I don't mind the fact that she leaves him, but. That's it. Then he just goes to jail, and we don't see him the rest of the episode. There's no resolution. So is he better?
Well, that's the end. That's the last moment of the episode.
That's what I'm saying. You're saying now he had this connection, this human connection, and it resolves his arc. But we don't get that. Like it seems like he didn't get it because she left it. Like it should have had this resolution where it goes either A, you know what, she's gone, but now at least I know what it's like, and I will try harder to get that human connection. And B, now I see why I've been putting up this wall and pushing people away. I will do the opposite now. Like that's the arc. Where
so I took it as the former, that like now he's had this experience of, I let someone in and it was good and it didn't work out, but that's life.
But they never had that moment where he says that because he says that. He just goes to jail. I'm assuming he's just heartbroken she left him, or he's fine with it. Fuck her. Either way, there's no resolution. He just kind of goes to jail.
I guess.
It's like there should have been two things. There should have been.
You want it to be tied up in a neat little package.
Yes, or even loosely tied, even a poorly wrapped package, like how I wrap Christmas gifts. But no, it should have been one of two things. It should have been like you said, that human connection, and now he realizes, that's life. But at least I got that human connection. That's okay. I think it would have been stronger if it was more concrete. And again, the episode doesn't start with him saying, "I'm lonely." It starts with him attacking everybody to the point where Tom Savini is like, "Hey, lighten up, man," and I'm going to make fun of you. He's
right, but I do think that stems from his self-esteem and
so
loneliness.
It should have ended with like him back at the comic book store. Maybe he's doing probation.
It is weird he was never back at the comic book store.
And maybe he's just lightened up a little bit. He's still comic book guy. He's still cynical. He's still pushing people away, but he's letting them in a little. So like now you have Bart like reading a comic, so something he would never allow before. But he's like. He's just like, that's $100. Like, okay, $5. He's giving a little wiggle room, and he's grown a little bit as a character. That's what I'm saying. There's no character growth. I think what you're saying is there was character growth. We just didn't see it.
I think I think we did see it because he was nicer. Well,
he wasn't.
There definitely needed to be more scenes. Like this whole thing was very rushed into the last act.
How about this? He loses his whole secret stash of videos and goes to jail. Maybe Bart and Milhouse go, "Well, we're sorry we lost your secret stash," and he goes, maybe like alien autopsies isn't everything, something like that, where he sees there's more to life.
Where he accepts that life is not just his store.
He sees Agnes across the street. He sees
something,
or he sees like a nerdy comic girl come in.
Right. Pull some sweet tarts out of your beer and you got a deal.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe just some kind of character growth and you could tie it in with him saying, "I don't need that secret stash. I don't care that they confiscated."
I agree. It would have been much better if they had that, but it wasn't fatal to me that they didn't.
You've convinced me that I was really like, oh man, this arc failed completely. And you've convinced me that it was much less of a fail than the arc fails we've seen the last few weeks.
Okay, that's all I'm trying to say. Very good. Okay.
They're not going to try, but they'll try to try.
Okay, so going back now, now Milhouse is saddled with thousands and thousands of copies
that
of
obviously
Biclops
aren't going to sell.
that nobody wants. Kearney comes in and says it's stupid, and he hits Milhouse with it, and he says, "Oh, it doesn't even smack good."
Which is the same joke as the Duff
Very
bottle.
similar to the Duff bottle joke, but I liked it. It doesn't even smack good.
Yeah.
It's a good line.
So it comes to a head. So Bart's very pissed off about these Biclops comics.
Yeah, and Bart is kind of taking Milhouse to task for being like, "Oh, I shouldn't have left the store. I sometimes forget how young you are." And
Bart's a real dick in this scene, and like he does something that I do when I fight with people sometimes that's really dickish of me, where you just try to act up above it, and you're just like, it's like, use your indoor voice, and you're trying to be the calm, rational one. You're just being a total prag about it.
Prag?
I don't know, it's prag.
Wasn't that one of Krang's generals in Ninja Turtles?
Well, that's what I meant. You were being totally one of Krang's generals.
We're coming from Dimension X.
A real Dimension X asshole. Yeah, and it was just like, Bart was just like, use your indoor voicemail. And you just wanted to smack him. It was just like, it was so obnoxious.
Dimension X asshole, possible name of the episode? Yeah, no, I agree. Bart was being a real dick. They also dragged it out, like where Milhouse... The young thing is kind of like they hit it a few times, but I do like that, and it makes sense that Bart's being an asshole to do this. Milhouse finally like stands up for himself.
Yeah, it's a really girly temper tantrum. He like screams, "Aye!" and goes to fight.
Well, he says, "I'm a boy. I'm a human boy, and just like you."
Yeah. I don't know. It's a little too sappy for me. I thought it was a little too much.
That was maybe a little too much, but
It didn't
I do
seem
like
like
the
it earned
idea.
that
Like,
emotional, but I don't know.
I like the idea of Milhouse standing up for himself.
Yeah, and then they fight, and they do a
Well,
quick...
Milhouse does this like flying crane kick, and it freeze frames. Bart's kind of like yawning, and then it turns into a comic book panel.
And that's how it ends the
And
act.
that's how the act
That
ends,
was
and then
fun.
they fade back in
I
with
get-
it. Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was a fun visual thing. Like if you're doing an episode about a comic book store,
do a
makes sense to
comic
do
book.
that.
But
I liked it.
it's something I've seen before in so many
Yeah, no, it's not
capacities.
original,
Right.
but you know, I liked the art.
Yeah, I like the fight music. They brought back the classic fight music.
Yes. So when they're actually fighting, they bring back the
Yeah.
music. I liked Bart grabs a Transformers toy from the display case, and it transforms into an axe that he attacks Milhouse with.
Yeah, yeah.
And so Milhouse grabs one, and he transforms it, and it turns into a watering can.
But he still uses the watering can.
yeah,
as
he
a
still
weapon,
uses
yeah.
it as a weapon. I mean, you can still
Bludgeon
club someone on the
people.
head with someone.
I've beaten lots of people down with
Oh,
my
I'm sure
watering
you
can.
I'm sure you have. Join us on the Wee Cruise.
I'll bludgeon you with the watering can.
Put that on.
That's
a
how
t-shirt.
we murder you.
That's right. Watering can bludgeoning. While they're fighting, they kind of go flying into a She-Hulk poster
Yeah.
that it turns out hides a secret
Compartment.
compartment into Comic Book Guy's secret library of bootlegs, which we were talking briefly about
Yeah,
before. And that kind of... Yeah, he's just got like wall-to-wall tapes.
And then that's I wasn't crazy about that. This doesn't really resolve. If anything, the Bart Milhouse character dynamic was the crux of this plot. Bart and Milhouse run a comic book store,
Right.
And then they kind of just forget about that. They kind of just go, "Oh, this is cool," and they make amends. And then it reverts back to just a very plot-heavy Bart and Milhouse have a comic book store.
Yeah,
you
eventually
lose that whole dynamic.
Eventually, Bart is like, "Yeah, partner."
Yeah,
I think when they're setting up the idea of doing this film
I guess
festival,
Milhouse fighting back is what earned Bart's respect. I don't know.
I guess.
I think I need a little bit more.
it's not exactly
Maybe Milhouse
spelled
comes
out.
up with the idea and saves the comic book store. He goes, Bart's like, we could watch this, and Milhouse could be like, or we could charge people to watch it and make our money. You know,
Did he? I don't remember. Maybe he did.
maybe I don't think he
remember,
did.
but
Milhouse should. I don't know. It needed some kind of story resolution.
I agree. So they're in his secret bootleg library, and Bart starts taking them off the shelves to see what they are. And you had Alien Autopsy, Illegal Alien Autopsy, which that's kind of funny. Illegal Alien Autopsy, and then it's Godfather 3 Good Version.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such a weak last gag. Like there's anything you can do.
That could have been That could have been a decent first or second one.
Yeah, like Godfather 3 first, like Good Version, and then two better ones than that.
Yeah, it was a little.
Like that's the best. That's the
especially
kicker.
especially like in 2000, whenever this aired.
Yeah, this was 2001.
Making fun of a 15-year-old movie, 12-year-old movie.
12-year-old, yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I did like the drunk Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
He goes, I want to take off the sweater. And Dan Castellaneta's delivery was great. He goes, I'm hot!
Which I think about that line all the time, and I had no idea it was from this episode.
I don't remember that line at all. I really liked it.
Yeah. One of the other videos was they find that there are police interview tapes,
Yeah.
and there's one with Flanders where he's complaining to the police that Homer released a radioactive ape into his house, which has now taken over the top floors of the house,
Talk
and they
about
can't go
this
up there
episode
anymore.
being silly.
So silly.
A radioactive ape.
It's reality breaking. You know, it's probably worse than the jockeys. Well, maybe not, because an ape could go to the power plant and
bigger
become
than that-
radioactive.
It's bigger than that monkey that caught on in Family Guy. Like that. There's that
Oh, yeah,
angry
the monkey in the closet.
Yeah. But this was even sillier. It's a glowing green.
It was
ape.
well. First, we just hear Flanders
Right, we
talking
only
about
hear
it, but
about the
the
ape.
very last scene of the episode, we're jumping ahead, is the ape is just this neon green like baboon ape thing. It's in Flanders' front seat, and
it's
Flanders is
smacking
driving around. It's just smacking Flanders, and he's like, "I'm turning. Why are you hitting it?" He just keeps slapping him.
So, like,
I
this-
thought it was so funny.
It's
I
so
bet a lot of you
silly.
didn't.
It's so
you probably
silly.
didn't.
I think it didn't. I feel like it's a cheaper form of humor than I would want from The Simpsons.
I agree,
it's
but
too
I
silly.
just
but
loved
it was silly enough, and they embraced the silliness where it worked. I really laughed
It's
at
something about the earnestness of Flanders. You think about how horrible Homer is to have inflicted this on him.
And Flanders,
It's all
the
just
Flanders,
funny.
Harry Shearer's delivery is great. Just point if you want me to turn. Just point, and the monkey just smacks him again. I liked
good.
it. And again, the show, it's
Crazy
not,
and weird,
It's
but
not
good.
what I would prefer. I would prefer a funnier, smarter Simpsons like the classic years.
Yeah.
But I would prefer, if I can't get that, I would take this embracing this super silliness over what we've been getting. This like trying to be weird and kind of mean spirited and
disjointed.
meta, and very disjointed. And
Yeah.
if you're not gonna have character arcs and smarter writing than just go all out and be silly like Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Or
Yeah, right.
So then it goes back real quick. It goes back to the Agnes and comic book guy, I was saying how it needed more. And for instance, this montage, we see them go on dates, and the montage is literally them being mean to kids by turning off a fire hydrant,
right?
Them being mean to another kid by crashing his boat. Or whatever.
They throw a rock,
and then
boat.
They say, "Ugh, sunsets, ugh." Like
Yeah.
Again, I like the idea of comic book guy and Agnes together. I like what they're doing with it, but that's
that
so
was like
lazy.
it was
It's
like
so-
nothing to me.
Yeah.
It was just nothing.
And that was a big part of the reason the whole thing didn't work for me. It's like if they should have gave that storyline more meat. So then the story pretty much wraps up. The cops bust the ring. Bart and Milhouse are invited.
They have
all
a
the
forbidden
kids.
film festival for $5 each.
One of the films I thought was very funny was an old army video saying that Springfield is the nuclear whipping boy, and all the
NWB.
countries will nuke it to calibrate their missiles.
All friendly
which is
nations.
a very silly idea, and I love. So that's a silly idea that, of course, Springfield. But I love that the
kids love it.
Yeah, they cheat.
They're like, yeah, Springfield.
Because it's just they're famous for something.
Yep.
Which, being from Staten Island, which is like the forgotten part of New York City.
Oh, yeah.
I think we can appreciate that. I mean, I'd rather us be the nuclear whipping boy than be famous for horrible police killings and our celebrities that come out of our island are not great. Although Chris Terrio, writer of Argo and Batman vs Superman, it's not bad.
Yep.
But I can relate to that. I love the kids cheering that they're the
that's a very
NWB.
Springfield thing.
And then it ends with comic book guy getting arrested, like I said. And I kind of just wish we just had one more quick beat
scene
with comic book guy.
I agree.
In the first moments of a nuclear war, Springfield will be bombed at will by all friendly nations to calibrate their missiles.
And that's it for Worst Episode Ever. Not the podcast. The podcast is not yet over. And there will be more episodes. That is it for this episode. So we are going to rank this episode on our master list of episodes that we've watched. And we're going to do that on a 4-factor test that we are looking at the humor, the integrity, the production, and the originality of the episode. So, Jack, if you would be so kind to put 2 minutes on our clock. There we go. Manual clock today. And, let's do it. Humor of the episode from 0 to 5. Jack, what do you think?
3.
Just okay. No it's no commentary.
I'd
just
say,
3.
I'd say it's.
I'm actually surprised that you're saying 3 because I thought you didn't like this episode
There
more.
was, like I said, I appreciated the sillier jokes out of context. I think individually there was a lot of fun jokes, like Lenny smashing the bottle and radioactive ape. But I also don't think it was wall-to-wall laughs.
I was going to come in 2.5, and you're actually swaying me to maybe go up to 3 also.
Yeah, I was thinking almost 3.5. I think it's funnier than the usual episodes we cover on this podcast, but not by much.
I feel like 3.5 is way too high.
Yeah, it is. So 3.
I'm going to say 2.5 for now. I might change it. Okay, the integrity of this episode. How did this episode hold together? Are the characters, how are they? What do you think?
I think the comic book guy, the way he interacts with people and his relationship with Agnes, it all made sense. I kind of wish they did more with it. Maybe I'll take points away from that in originality. Mm-hmm. Bart and Milhouse's dynamic, very, 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 very done before, but it fits.
Yeah, but it was done
3.
well-ish.
I'll give it 3.
That's... all right. 3 is also where I'm probably going to end up. Production of this episode. What do you got here?
You got your fight music. Like I said, it opens up with the da-na-da-da-da, so the music is all on. You had some comic book stuff that was interesting.
Homer's antacid trip was nice.
Nothing was really wowed me.
No.
3.
Well, I like the comic book art-ish stuff.
Yeah. I'll say 3.
I might go 3.5. Okay, and the originality of the episode. So that's kind of taking in the story originality and all sorts of different things. So what do you think?
Well,
there?
you were I think bigger on the arc than me. You think it worked better.
I thought it worked better, but I do think it could have used more. And I like the idea of the episode, like, hey, let's do an episode about comic book guy. I like the premise of Bart and Milhouse running the comic book store. It almost felt like you could have lost some of the less good stuff and squeezed in a few more scenes that had more like building blocks to it, like another Agnes and comic book guy scene, another Bart and Milhouse scene,
more of that,
and then an ending scene for comic book guy.
I definitely think I need a lot
So I'll take
more
points away for that. But overall, I do think it was a pretty well done episode.
What would you give it?
So I'm probably thinking 3 or 3.5. Maybe 3.5.
I agree. I like the idea. The stories, both stories I like. I think the arc kind of failed. I'm going to give it a 2.
All right, so we have crunched our numbers, and worst episode ever from season 12 has ranked as a slightly better episode than The Book Job, and a slightly worse episode than Brawl in the Family. That's interesting. I think that's a little higher than we thought it might go. It is
higher, but I think this episode just kind of felt generically weak, but didn't really have any fundamental flaws in any of the categories. So
yeah,
it's a fine spot for it. Also, season 12. It's post-classic, but I feel like most of the episodes we'll cover there are just going to feel more old than new.
I feel like we're clustering a lot of season 12 episodes here, or around that, like Pokemon is around here.
Yeah, Pokemon's a good one. I feel like Simpsons Safari might be one of the bigger duds of the bunch.
Yeah, and that's much lower than here. So great. So that is it for worst episode ever. Except it's not. We have a number of announcements.
Yeah, we have several announcements. Big day.
And if you don't normally listen through the end of the show, we have a great cut all this that we should listen to, but we'll get there. First, we want to talk about Woohoo Classic Simpsons Trivia. That is, I host that with friend of the show, Dan Ozzie. That's the first Thursday of every month at Berry Park in Brooklyn. If you're in the area, you should come to this one on October 1st. Because it is our annual costume contest, and it should be a lot of fun. We'll post some pictures, definitely in the Reddit, if not anywhere else, after that's happened, so that our non-Brooklyn listeners can take a look at that, and that should be good.
Also, for people who are in Brooklyn or not in Brooklyn, anybody who has YouTube, access to YouTube, we're trying to do some more stuff with our YouTube channel, and our episodes are there too. If some people like to listen to
the first 12 episodes are up on YouTube.
The podcast adverse. But we just threw a new little video out there to check it out. It's a commercial for our Wii Cruise, and if we're making commercials for it, that's just one step closer to the reality.
It's almost real.
So check that out on our YouTube channel. What's our YouTube channel called?
You can go to WePodcast.com, and you can find links to it. And while you're there, you can find links to our Facebook, our Twitter, our subreddit. We'll definitely post it on the subreddit also. And you can suggest episodes. If you have a terrible Simpsons episode you'd like us to watch, you can do that there. You can do pretty much anything you want on WePodcast.com.
Yeah, you can follow our Twitter from there. You can also follow us personally.
Yes, I'm at Then Dan Says.
I'm at Jackie No Breaks, and we don't mind if we don't know you, add us. It's fine. I think that's how Twitter works.
I don't follow back though. And while you're on the WePodcast.com, we really appreciate you guys clicking through the Amazon links, but to make a little other money, we're doing something a little more fun than clicking through Amazon, although what could possibly be more fun than clicking through Amazon?
Than shopping.
We've been teasing this for a little while, and we're finally doing it in, I believe, 1 month from when this episode airs. We're going to do it right after our anniversary as a podcast.
Our 1 year anniversary. We're launching a commentary series.
Yes.
Where we'll be doing commentaries on movies.
The first edition of this, we're calling it Sync Points.
Yeah.
It's a movie commentary, and our first one, obviously, is going to be the Simpsons movie.
Very cool.
So we're doing commentary for the Simpsons movie. I think it's probably going to be $2 to download it. It won't be a normal podcast, and it's designed to be listened to while you watch the Simpsons movie yourself. So that's going to be coming. Get ready for that. We'll let you know when that's happening. And I think that's it. Next week, we're going to do another one. We're going to start off another 50. See how we do when we get to episode 100. We are going to do an episode from a season we have not done before.
Oh.
And it is the premiere of season 27.
Wow.
The comeback season, we hope.
So it'll be pretty tight. Well, it'll air
it's airing in 3 days if you're listening to this the day the episode drops. Sunday, September 27th, 2015 is when this episode's going to air, and our episode will come out the following Thursday.
All right, so if you can wait a few days, that's as close as we can get.
So come back next week.
And before we wrap up, one last pretty big announcement. Since it is our Fittivittery, we wanted to do a nice gesture, something just generous, like pay it forward.
Right.
So we've decided
our
Jubilee year. We've decided to forgive Popeye's Chicken for their awful customer service.
Yes, we're gonna give them another shot. It's terrible again.
So we're gonna wrap up this podcast in a second, and we're gonna go, me and Dan, and have some Popeyes together, and we'll bring it back. But don't worry, we're still working on our Blutos. It'll be a friendly rivalry.
Right.
Because I think the world needs a Blutos.
Yes. Thanks, guys. We got our Cut All This week from Rebo-chan, and it's an awesome one, so you guys should listen to it.
Harry Shearer replacement auditions, applicant number 1.
Hey, Smithers! Nuclear showers don't give superpowers. They cause cancer.
Next.
I am Kent Brockman. You will acknowledge the Daleks as your superior race. Now for sports.
Next.
Oh, yeah, right, Lisa. A wonderful magical animal from which all good foods come from.
Senator Cruz, that's not even one of Mr. Shearer's characters, and we told you to go home an hour ago.
Wait, how about Lisa? But Dad, I'm gonna grow up to be a godless parasite on society.
Security! Hi diddly ho, neighbor. I like frosted chocolate butts. Do you want to get some frosted chocolate butts too?
Who are you even auditioning for?
Audition? I'm just here for butts.
Gopher, where the hell are you getting these people? I told you to call the casting agency. Did you just go to the bus stop again?
Wait, they're calling off the Shearer audition? He's coming back? All right, people, that's a wrap. We're casting the Empty Nest reunion tomorrow. Oh, cut all this.